Hi, I am Shringal V. Conception, and my assigned topic was From the First Quarter Storm to the Declaration of Martial Law. In 1965 to 1972 is a year of massive student rallies, transport strikes, farmers, workers, and urban poor demonstrations, as well as the protest marches of group of professionals. So these happenings that leads to the declaration of martial law. In the first quarter storm, the Philippines was a social volcano that was ready to erupt. So because of some happenings, the Philippines was called social volcano because of uh, low um, negative impact to the economic and to the social society of the Philippines. Marcos declared martial law according to him that would prevent further chaos and gave him extended term of office to reform Philippine society. Crisis in society. In the infusion of so much money into unproductive electoral activity caused inflation. The infusion of much money into unproductive electoral activity um, has a negative or bad impact to the people of the Philippines. So these are the impact or the effect towards the people. This is the increasing prices of commodities, slow industrialization, low wages, unemployment, overseas workers was not yet institutionalized. As crises rise, the discontented workers strike together with the jeepney drivers. As what I have said, as the negative impact, um, the workers and the jeepney drivers strike together to protest to the government. Parity rights had favored foreign businessmen. Agriculture was in similar state. Also, um, not just in economic, but as well as in agriculture. It was also has a negative impact or in a worse state. So, these are the affected affected these are the affected in agriculture. Small and medium scale rice farmers suffered, so they suffered a lot. Peasant remained poor and discontented. Increase number of NPA recruits. So this increase in number of NPA recruits. Because of that bad impact or negative impact, NPA took it as an advantage and recruit as many as they can because the people were so vulnerable at that state. Due to the increasing poverty in many provinces, many people by families flock to the cities to meet with their living conditions. So they migrate to the cities to meet their living conditions. Urban poor demolitions in the squatter colonies and police brutality lead people to join movement protests. So this leads to the people to join protest movements. Because of some sequence of events, people are alarmed. Even the middle class people started to be alarmed. So these are the happenings or the events that start that uh, give people anxiety, or they started to be alarmed. Violent dispersal of rallies, sexual abuse, brawls involving U.S. servicemen, shooting of scavengers on mistaken identity. January, uh, January 26, 1970, hundreds of students protest against Marcos to convene a constitutional convention. So this hundred of students was against Marcos. And on January 30, there a battle of Medjola. So the protest of the students was called a Battle of Menjola. Liza Balando, the young labor leader, was hit by stray bullet, and a group of students was arrested and hurled into waiting police vehicle like pigs. So this protest or this rally um, has a shooting, or what do you call this? Um, there was this happenings that Liza Balando was hit by a stray bullet, and then Marcos was blaming the students. So they were arrested and hurled into waiting police vehicle like pigs. The 1971 Constitutional Convention and 1973 Constitution. All formerly disinterested in politics joined forces. They wanted a new constitution to replace the constitution, the 1935 Constitution, which they describe as colonial, being a product of U.S. dictation. Groups of nationalist and liberal politicians supported them. Their coalition won one-third of the seats in the election for delegates. So this for formerly disinterested in politics was the nuns, the seminarians, and the priests. So they formed a coalition and won one-third of the seats in the election for delegates. The debate in the convention focused mainly on the issues of shifting the form of government from presidential to semi-parliamentary or parliamentary system. Rosario Mendoza Cortez says demonstrations fitted well into the secret plans of Ferdinand Marcos. So her source was Primitero Mijares. So in August 21, 1971, the Liberal Party's meeting, the Avance, was held in Plaza Miranda in Quiapo, Manila. Overpricing of government purchases, millions of people worth of preparations, goods just rotting away, millions of funds and uncounted for from the Philippine charity sweepstakers, deliver diversion of calamity funds to the armed forces and the navy, the unexplained delay of quarterly and a million pesos for the teachers' salary increase. Added to this were the Golden Buddha incident. The administration's plan on cheating and the unexplained Marcus wealth. So this um these were the people wanted to be discussed in the convention that happened inside the Plaza Miranda convention. So, but then the night became a nightmare. A bomb exploded on the stage where election candidates delivered speeches. So the night became a nightmare because there's a bomb explode on the stage. Eva Estrada Cala, a senatorial candidate and eyewitness sa Longga, Osmeña, Judy Roxanne, Eddie Elarde, a photographer, and another person were victims of the bombing incident. So these were they were the victims of the bombing incident in the Plaza Miranda. Marcos blamed the communists for the Plaza Miranda bombing. According to him, the bombing was part of communist July to August plan to topple the government. So Marcos blamed the communists. Marcos accused Ninoy Aquino of the Liberal Party, who was late for the meeting de Avance, of being hook cuddler or provider of aid, a comfort to some of subversive. So he accused Ninoy Aquino for being late. General Manuel Tian, a AFP chief staff, declared that there was no crisis to justify the declaration of martial law. Um, so General Manuel Tian was against to the idea of declaration of martial law because according to him, there was no crisis to justify the declaration of martial law. The Declaration of Martial Law. Proclamation 1081 dated on September 21, 1972 was actually signed 4 days earlier. So it is signed in advance 4 days earlier. Former allies of Marcos would later say these incidents were part of Marcos' plan to sow anarchy, terror, fear, and despair as the signal for its formal declaration on the 23rd of September. So his allies says that the happenings or the events before it was Marcos' plan to show terror and fear to the people for the declaration of martial law. Senator Benigno Aquino Jr., outspoken journalist, writers, oppositionists, politicians, labor union leaders, student activists, and radical delegates to the Constitutional Convention. So that's all. That's all my report. That's all, and thank you.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My topic is all about the Declaration of Martial Law. Proclamation 1081, dated September 21, 1972, was actually signed 4 days earlier. Prior to its signing, a series of mysterious bombing incidents took place. The fake ambush of then Secretary of National Defense, once Ponce Enrile, served as the signal for its normal declaration on the 23rd of September. First on the list of those to be arrested was Senador Benigno Aquino Jr., who had plans for running for president in the 1973 election. The list included outspoken journalist and writer, oppositionist, politician, labor union leaders, student activists, and radical delegates to the Constitutional Convention, who were against the extension of Marcos' term under a new constitution and form of government. To allay the fear of the Filipino, Marcos went on air to give this message. I assure you I am utilizing the power vested in me by the Constitution to save the Republic and reform our society. He also announced that martial law when suspended constitutional rights was only for a limited period. His critics, however, were quick to rebut Marcos' justification. They argued that martial law was declared to save Marcos and not the Republic. Marcos wasted no time. Within the next, he tried to restore peace and order, clean up the government of its corrupt and efficient personnel, cut down criminality, and set up a systematic plan to develop the economy. In time, as the months turned into years, the Marcos regime, backed by the military, would reveal that more than reforming a society, the intent was to crush dissent and hostility to his plan to stay in power for an indefinite length of time. So next, from martial law to people power, 1972 to 1986. The Philippines until 1972 held the election regularly. Every 2 years for a third of the Senate, the President was also allowed to run for a second term and thus stay in power for a maximum of 8 years. In 1972, then President Ferdinand E. Marcos, who was on his second and last term, was able to extend his stay in office to a third time. So President Ferdinand Marcos was extend his stay in office to third time. He is the President of the Philippines who was the highest term in our country. President Marcos showed what he called constitutional authoritarianism. So, authoritarianism is a political system characterized by the rejection of political plurality, the use of strong central power to preserve the political status quo, and reduction in the role of law, separation of power, and democratic voting. Extended his presidency that lasted 20 years or 2 decades, the longest in the Philippines history. To effectively silence the opposition, the Congress was padlocked, media was shut down, and Marcos's critics and rivals were arrested and detained. Marcos' promises of a new society that would solve insurgency, criminality, and poverty helped to quiet down dissent from the majority of the population. Their effort would lead coverage into a force called people power, triggered by Ninoy Aquino assassination and followed by many heroic acts for the restoration of democracy by the broad sectors of society. Next, Marcos' new society. Marcos envisioned a revolution from the center. The center referred to the silent majority who were neither leftist or pro-radical change like a socialist or communist society, nor rightists who were pro-status quo dominated by few landed rights or the oligarchy. The center through a strong executive would bring about a new society, a bagong lipunan, that was self-disciplined, self-reliant, prosperous, and peaceful. The new society would be created without resorting to bloody revolution. Thus, Marcos, through several presidential decrees, reorganized the bureaucracy, formed the National Economic and Development Authority, or NIDA, to plan and supervise the National Development Program, and instituted the National Grains Authority, or NGA, to stabilize grain supply and pricing. To balance population growth with economic growth, he set up the Population Commission. Using tax money and foreign laws, Marcos built more schools, marketplaces, hospitals, roads, bridges, and ports. By joining the Association of Southeast Asia Nations, or ASEAN, in 1976, the Philippines drew closer to neighbors and the Third World countries. The one-sided RPU-US trade relation ended with the termination of the Laurel-Langley Agreement in 1974. The U.S. naval base in Subic Bay closed in September 1971, while was amended the previous year, 1970, reduced the original 19 years lease to 25 years.